Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. I thought that I would do this little video that I thought would be very particularly interesting. And this is going to be a video over a conversation over a statement that Vasyl High-Tech Lomachenko, or Vasyl the Matrix Lomachenko, recently stated about another top contender and a very extraordinarily talented fighter in Mr. Gervonta Tank Davis. I thought that I would commentate on this because I thought that, in my view, that Vasyl Lomachenko, that with the statement that he made about Gervonta Tank Davis, that he told a little bit of the truth. And basically what he said in a nutshell, for those of you that, did not hear about the statement or did not read up on it, Vasyl Lomachenko basically stated that he did not believe that Gervonta Tank Davis was that good of a fighter. And he believes that in order to be impressive, or in order overall for his career to go to the next level, or at least for him to be impressed, he needs to see actually some decently big wins. He needs to see wins over some top contenders at the 135-pound division. Because truth be told about Mr. Gervonta Tank Davis, he really has not fought a lot of the top contenders at the 135-pound division. Now, do I agree with Lomachenko that Gervonta Tank Davis is not a very good fighter? I disagree with that because I think that Gervonta Tank Davis is an extraordinary talent. But Gervonta Tank Davis is almost getting to that 30-fight mark. And a lot of people, of course, especially from these LDBC and new media channels, they love to criticize Vasyl Lomachenko because at one point in time he was ranked as the #1 pound-for-pound fighter throughout the whole entire sport, which I really never had a problem with because, in my opinion, he really, truly, you could debate, deserved to be there. This was a guy that within, how many fights does he have? He has 18 total fights within his career, and he's already fought 8 either former or current champions whenever he fought them. You're talking about Richard Comey, I believe, being on his resume, Guillermo Rigondeaux, Jorge Linares, Nicholas Walters, Gary Russell Jr. You're also talking about, I believe, Jose Pedraza being on his record. When you take a look at Gervonta Tank Davis's wins over fighters that were at a decent point in their career, that were either current champions or former champions, you know how many that he has on there? He has 2. He has one, I believe, over Leo Santa Cruz, and another one over Jose Pedraza. And some people may say, well, what about Yuriorkis Gamboa? What about Jesus Cuellar? Why are you not counting those wins? Because I don't count wins overall, in my opinion, over a fighter that had no chance to regain the title like what a Yuriorkis Gamboa did at that point in time in his career. And on top of that, Jesus Cuellar was never a real champion in my eyes. Because in order for you to be a real champion in my eyes, you have to be someone that was not an interim or a regular champion. That is not one of the 4 main belts. All right, that is not one of the 4 main belts. It's just like in UFC. Dustin Poirier or Justin Gaethje or Tony Ferguson, in my opinion, they can never claim that they were the best all around in the 155-pound division because they never won the official 155-pound belt. They won the interim title, but I don't care about interim titles. An interim title, all that is basically saying that I don't have the official belt. So in my opinion, being a regular or interim champion, that's not a real champion. It just is what it is in my view. But anyways, we're going to see what this video or what Mr. Southpaw has to say. And I am going to review a video by Mr. Southpaw773 or by Southpaw TV, whatever his channel name is at the current moment in time. And some of you may wonder, I don't really see you review Southpaw's channels that much, or channel. Why is that? Well, the reason why that is because this dude might be the most over-emotional and possibly deranged boxing channel that I've seen personally on YouTube, on Facebook, on TikTok, whatever the source may be. He is the most over-emotional dude that I've personally seen, and almost every single one of his arguments is just pure emotional opinion. This dude always has some pro-racial issue. He is always having some emotional outburst. It almost is to the point of lunacy. Like, this dude almost comes off to me as someone who is mentally ill. That is what he comes across to me, and that is the reason why a lot of the times I do not really even bother to review his videos. Because a lot of the times there's not going to be facts in there. There's not going to be certain good arguments. He really doesn't propose, he really doesn't propose any intelligent arguments within his videos. All he does usually is pretty much scream and ramble on about his emotional thoughts. It just is what it is. Even Dante and Aki and some of the other channels that I tend to review, yeah, they might be emotional, but at least some of the points when it comes down to it, they may have a little bit of merit even here and there, or at least is debated somewhat of an intellectual property. Southpaw has no intellectual arguments whatsoever. All he's going to do is scream and go on these super deranged, over emotional rants. But anyways, we're going to see overall what he has to say. Let's get into it.
Great white hype, Vasyl Lomachenko came out disrespecting Tank Davis today. He said Tank ain't fought nobody at the top in the lightweight division. Is Lomachenko trying to be just like Devin Haney, the weight drain clown? Is he trying to be like...
And for those of you out there that believe that Southpaw 773 or Southpaw TV, for those of you that believe that, oh hell yeah, this dude is just speaking the truth on, all the great white hypes and all this other bullshit. He's not just against overall certain fighters that are Caucasian or, Mexican. He's not even just against those certain fighters. He will turn on certain black fighters as well, if they are not a part of his agenda. He does not like Devin Haney either. And the reason why that is because he's going after Gervonta Tank Davis. The main reason why he's going after Devin Haney, even though I believe once upon a time he liked him, at least from what I've seen, is because he's mainly rooting for Gervonta Tank Davis.
Clout chaser Ryan Garcia.
Now, there was a couple of people within my comment section that stated, well, I believe that Devin Haney is just a weight bully. Listen, I understand. In my opinion, Devin Haney is a natural 140-pounder. But in my opinion, the size difference, at least with him, compared to that of a Jojo Diaz or that of a George Kambosos, I wouldn't say that it was as big of a weight advantage as, let's say, when Errol Spence Jr. fought that of a Mikey Garcia. In my opinion, it's not like it was a difference between two weight divisions. If it was a fight like that, then maybe I would understand. But Devin Haney and George Kambosos, yes, you could clearly tell that Devin Haney was the bigger fighter. But at the end of the day, the sizes were at least a little bit comparable. Now, if Devin Haney fought Lomachenko, in my opinion, that would be a very difficult fight for Lomachenko to win, because that would basically be like Oscar De La Hoya versus Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker. There would be a decent size advantage there. So, but it is what it is. We still have to give Devin Haney credit. If we gave Errol Spence Jr. credit over Mikey Garcia and Lomachenko credit over Guillermo Rigondeaux overall, and Canelo credit over, some of the smaller fighters that he maybe has fought, or, if you give Gennady Golovkin credit over that of a Kell Brook or Bernard Hopkins over Tito Trinidad, then in my opinion, Devin Haney has to get credit here. It just is what it is. I thought he showed his clear, better boxing ability. Is he a little bit better than the majority of, or excuse me, is he a little bit bigger than the majority of 135-pounders? Yes. But I thought Teofimo Lopez was as well. Does that mean that, in my opinion, that his win doesn't count over Vasyl Lomachenko? I don't know if I can go that far.
Maybe it's because ain't nobody trying to pay attention to Lomachenko's upcoming fight with Jermaine Ortiz, his sparring partner. That's right. Maybe...
I'm not really too familiar with who Jermaine Ortiz is. I would have to watch some of his fights. But apparently from what I hear, he's a decently slick fighter. From the highlights that I have seen, at least from what I remember, he seems like a decently lengthy fighter, at least compared to Lomachenko. That's going to be a very interesting comeback fight. And from what I hear, apparently Jermaine Ortiz is also undefeated. I will be doing a fight prediction. I believe that fight happens within the next couple of weeks. If not this month, then the end of next month. That's going to be very interesting.
Lomachenko forgot that he ain't nothing but a media sensation, a hype job. Maybe he forgot.
No, Lomachenko is not what I would call a hype job. And listen, I get it. Certain people, of course, come on my channel and they'll say, oh, well, Lomachenko was completely hyped up, because he's Caucasian and blah, blah, blah. Listen, I understand that, but we got to understand the difference between a great white hype and someone that, yeah, sure, they might have had a little bit of that hype behind them because they were of a different demographic, but they also were a little bit of the real deal. Canelo Alvarez and Lomachenko is the complexion of part of their hype. Sure, you can definitely argue that, but you can't sit here and tell me with a straight face, if you actually know anything about boxing, that those fighters are just great big white hypes. That tells me that you really don't know shit about boxing, and that you're letting your racial and over-emotional and insecure agenda really get in the way of your analyzation. And that's why a lot of the times I can't take these guys too seriously. Vasyl Lomachenko, if we really want to go there, when you take a look at Gervonta Tank Davis's record, he has, I believe, 26 or 27 fights on his record. The first argument that a lot of these guys will always pull out of their ass about Lomachenko is that, oh, well, Lomachenko already has 2 losses and he doesn't even have any more than 16 wins. Right, but we must understand that Lomachenko was thrown to the lion's den immediately. Like, he came from the amateurs with a great amount of experience, and then immediately he was thrown in there basically with the champion from day one. All right, Lomachenko went into the ring with Orlando Salido in his second professional fight. He ended up losing that fight. And there was a certain amount of people that questioned me, and they said, well, you know what? I hear you always criticize Mr. Jamel Charlo, but you don't criticize Lomachenko for losing to Orlando Salido, but you criticize Jamel Charlo for losing to Tony Harrison. Right, but, and it's no offense, but if you're asking me that question in the first place, what that already tells me is that you really don't realize the context. Lomachenko, once again, yes, he was coming from the amateurs, is very highly experienced, but he was going in there against a very highly touted fighter, or at least a fighter that was majorly experienced. Yes, you can bring up all the losses that Orlando Salido has and all this other shit, but that would basically be like Jamel Charlo in the first 10 fights of his professional career when it came down to it, or in the second professional fight of his career. That'd be like if he got in the ring against Julian J. Rock Williams or something like that. Now, am I necessarily saying that Salido is as good as what a Julian J. Rock Williams was? No, but everyone knows that Julian J. Rock Williams, that he's clearly not an A-grade fighter. It's just, it is what it is. So what I'm saying is that Salido was a very decently rough and tough fighter. Lomachenko ended up losing that fight. It was competitive, but once again, I also give him a little bit of a break because that was his second fight. When Jamel Charlo ended up losing to Tony Harrison, Jamel Charlo was looked at the peak of his career. He already had about 30 fights on his record. So there's no excuse to losing to Tony Harrison, a guy that had never won a belt before you and never won one after. So that loss, in my opinion, is 20 times worse than Lomachenko's loss to Orlando Salido, just because of the context behind it. And not everyone's going to understand that. That's okay.
That he only got 18 fights himself, 2 losses. Maybe he forgot that he lost his second professional.
And even if we were going to compare him to other fighters, and this is why I've never had Terrence Bud Crawford. Now, if you have him at your number one pound for pound spot, I don't have a problem with that. But the problem with Terrence Bud Crawford is that when you take a look at Lomachenko and Terrence Bud Crawford's resume, Lomachenko's resume is still better than that of a Terrence Bud Crawford's if you just consider the A-grade level fighters that he's beaten. When you consider the champions or the former champions that Crawford fought that were at a decent point in their career, I mean, who really do you have? You have Ricky Burns, you have Yuriorkis Gamboa, which is one of the bigger wins, you have Victor Postal, Julius Ndango, Jeff Horn, Sean Porter, and if you really wanted to, Amir Khan and Kell Brook, but I really don't even count those two. And a lot of people will say, why don't you count those two? Because that was a great example of two fighters that were completely washed. Those fighters were done. They were never going to win another belt in their career. Never.
Fight to Orlando Salido, a man with 12 losses. That's right. Maybe Lomachenko forgot that nowadays he's fighting Teofimo's leftovers. Richard Coleman.
He did fight a little bit of Teofimo Lopez's leftovers with Nakatani, the Japanese fighter, and Richard Kame, and, or Kame, however you pronounce it, who are still two decent fighters, but I wouldn't rank him any more higher than a B. It just is what it is. Someone maybe even debate a C. I would say Richard Kame is a B, and Lomachenko obviously looked very, very dominant against Kame. If Lomachenko, in my opinion, is going to climb back to the pound-for-pound list, he's going to have to beat a champion. Whether it's Shakur Stevenson or Devin Haney, one of those guys, Gervonta Tank Davis, he's going to have to defeat one of those guys.
And Nakatani. Maybe Lomachenko don't want to accept reality. Let me explain. Can y'all imagine if Gervonta Tank Davis actually requested a franchise belt like Lomachenko did?
Well, what really is the reality of the situation, Mr. Southpaw TV? Because all Lomachenko really stated was the truth. And it's not that Gervonta Tank Davis is not a great talent. It's not that he's not a good fighter. In my opinion, he's a great talent. I want to call him a great fighter, but I can't really call him a great fighter until he does something. Now, some people may say, oh, what are you talking about? He defeated Isaac Pitbull Cruz and Mario Barrios and, overall, what the hell is the other dude's name? Rolando Romero. None of those dudes are going to be A-grade fighters in the future. Just ask. And, I also said this about a recent fighter, Naoya Inoue, and I had some people disagree with me, and it is what it is. We're not always going to agree on everything. That's cool. But certain people were coming at me, or they were saying, well, in my opinion, Naoya Inoue has actually beat some A-grade fighters. I just don't think that you watch the lower weight divisions what constitutes, in your opinion, of being an A-grade fighter. And I'll just tell you, what constitutes, in my opinion, being an A-grade fighter is that you can actually beat other A-grade fighters. And if you can't beat other A-grade fighters, you're not an A-grade fighter. And if we're talking about Emmanuel Rodriguez, who of course fought Naoya Inoue not too long ago, it was a very decent win. But I don't know if I can really count Emmanuel Rodriguez as someone that is truly A grade. This is also the same guy that after he lost to Naoya Inoue, he lost to a guy that ended up losing to a 39-year-old Nonito Donaire within 4 rounds by knockout. And in my opinion, Nonito Donaire, his skill set was always a little bit limited anyway. I'm not even sure if Nonito Donaire at his best was ever truly 100% A grade. And certain people may disagree with me on that. Listen, the way Lomachenko was able to take care of Guillermo Rigondeaux versus Nonito Donaire, that pretty much tells me everything I need to know right there. Now, once upon a time, I would say that Donaire was A grade, but he hasn't been A grade really ever since the Nicholas Walters and that of the Guillermo Rigondeaux fights. It just is what it is. And there's proof afterwards, because after that, he didn't just get outboxed by those guys. He got outboxed by a multitude of guys. He lost a multitude of fights. It just is what it is. So that, in my opinion, is what constitutes an A-grade fighter. Now, what I will say is this, just to continue that conversation. If you believe in your personal heart or in your personal opinion that Emmanuel Rodriguez can beat someone like a Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez, or, someone like a Naoya, well, I won't say Inoue, obviously, because Inoue already, beat the shit out of him. But if you truly believe that he can defeat someone like a Chocolatito Gonzalez, or a Juan Francisco Estrada, or the best version of what used to be Sarang Bisai, or someone overall like a Stevon Fulton, if you believe that he can beat any of those guys, then I'll say, okay, fair enough. In your opinion, he should be an A-grade fighter. In my opinion, does he defeat any of those guys? I don't know if he defeats any of those guys. That, in my opinion, is what constitutes an A-grade fighter. So it just is what it is. If we're going to use Terrence Bud Crawford's, fight against Victor Postol, for example, Victor Postol could be debated as an A-grade fighter at the time. And he still could be if you wanted to, because he was able to defeat Lucas Matisse. But every other big fight in his career, he lost. He lost to Josh Taylor. He lost to Crawford. He lost to Jose Ramirez. He recently got knocked out by one of the Russell brothers. Is that really a guy, in your opinion, that is truly A-grade? Because in my opinion, he's not. So just because someone has a title, just because someone all in all was ranked highly within a weight division, that doesn't mean that they were A-grade. It just is what it is. Gervonta Tank Davis, for example, against Jose Pedraza. Do you truly believe within your mind that Jose Pedraza was an A-grade fighter when Gervonta Tank Davis fought him? I don't believe so. It doesn't mean that he was a bad fighter. It doesn't mean that you're trying to discredit the win. But if you don't see that fighter defeating possibly other A-grade fighters, then you cannot be counted as an A-grade fighter, period, point blank.
Can you imagine if Tank had 2 losses? Can you imagine if Tank lost only his second professional fight?
And once again, going back to the point of Southpaw TV claiming, well, maybe Lomachenko doesn't want to accept the reality. Well, the reality of the situation is that Gervonta Tank Davis is, I don't know how old he is, but he's getting to almost to that 30th fight mark. I believe that he's 27-0, and this dude has almost fought nobody. And I like Gervonta Tank Davis. He's a very decently great talent. But at the end of the day, who are the best wins of his career? Leo Santa Cruz, who I think was a decent fighter, but are we really 100% sure if he was ever A-grade? Now, some people all in all may disagree with that. This is what I consider A-grade for those weight divisions. If you're not a Lomachenko, a Gervonta Tank Davis, a Devin Haney, or a Shakur Stevenson, in my opinion, you're not A-grade. Maybe Oscar Valdez as well. I don't even know if Leo Santa Cruz is on the same level as an Oscar Valdez, but some of you may disagree with me. You're also talking about the same guy that at once upon a time lost to Carl Frampton. And Frampton at one point in time was a very decent fighter, maybe even A-grade, but Frampton also had a lot of deficiencies. So it is what it is. But anyways, getting back to the point of Gervonta Tank Davis, Southpaw is saying, well, maybe Lomachenko doesn't want to set the reality. Well, he basically just told you reality, which is that Gervonta Tank Davis is not fighting a lot of the top contenders at 135, or at least fighters that he truly believes truly stand a chance.
Think that Tank Davis would be on the pound for pound list the way the great white hype is? I don't think so. To this day.
Well, I understand where you're coming from there, Southpaw, when it comes down to it, but at the end of the day, overall, Lomachenko still is one of the best fighters in the world. But what I will say is this, Lomachenko right now, in my opinion, does not deserve to be on the pound-for-pound list. He ended up losing the last big 50-50 fight of his career. He has no belts when it comes down to it. So if he is going to get back in that conversation, he's going to have to defeat either a Devin Haney, a Gervonta Tank Davis, or a Shakur Stevenson. because beating a George Kambosos or an Isaac Pitbull Cruz, I mean, those are very decent wins, but those are not A-grade wins, in my opinion, at least not against Isaac Pitbull Cruz. And of course, Kambosos, he's coming off of 2 ass whoopings over Devin Haney. The fight that I would really love to see for Lomachenko next is Shakur Stevenson or Gervonta Tank Davis. But Gervonta Tank Davis, in my opinion, he's just not going to fight him. And Gervonta Tank Davis has never been interested in facing Lomachenko. And it's also very ironic because Southpaw and a certain amount of these other guys, they claim that Lomachenko is a coward for giving up the WBC title, which I get it, But Lomachenko, of course, was also in the middle of facing Teofimo Lopez. But what they always seem to forget is that Gervonta Tank Davis avoided Lomachenko a multitude of times. Every single time Lomachenko's name used to be brought up around Gervonta Tank Davis, he used to piss his pants.
Imagine having only 18 fights, no championships, and 2 losses.
And Gervonta Tank Davis also has not seemed to call out Teofimo Lopez when he was one of the elite champions there. He also has showed no interest in Devin Haney, at least at the current moment in time. If Gervonta Tank Davis was a different complexion, Dante's Boxing Nation and all these other channels, they'd be on him like, they'd be on his ass like grass. So, come on, let's be real here.
Yet every single old media member...
Now, that could necessarily be because, maybe they're interested in the Ryan Garcia fight and they don't want to get any other fight other than that fight. But if that fight does not happen next or soon, Gervonta Tank Davis is eventually going to have to get in there with the bigger names. Otherwise, he's going to get put under a great amount of scrutiny and criticism, and deservedly so. Once again, I always review certain things on my channel. Everyone always, or a certain amount of these guys, they always get after Canelo or someone else all in all that they don't end up liking. No, the real cherry pickers are certain fighters like a Gervonta Tank Davis or what a Mikey Garcia was. Those are real fighters. And overall how those fighters are cherry pickers are overall clearly, matching up well because the fighters that they fight are really not even debatable champions. People will say, oh, well, he defeated Mario Barrios and Rolando Romero and Isaac Pitbull Cruz and yada, yada. Those guys are not even legitimate champions. I do not count overall fighters that have either just won the regular title or the interim title, especially when they're only B grade. Maybe if you want to debate someone like Lara when he won the regular title back then, because he was clearly A grade when he fought Canelo and Jarrett Hurd, maybe then, if you wanted to count that, or Rigondeaux when he ended up winning the regular title when he fought John Real Casimero. But the majority of fighters, and pretty much every fighter, in my opinion, if we're going to keep the same energy, that wins the regular or interim championship, I'm sorry, that's not a real champion.
Put you on the pound for pound list. Tank Davis don't got that type of privilege. I'm talking about white privilege and...
Well, in my opinion, Vasyl Lomachenko right now is not on the pound for pound list. But you know who else is not on the pound for pound list? Gervonta Tank Davis. He can't be. Who are you legitimately fighting?
Boxing. The complexion for the protection. To this day. Is Vasyl Lomachenko a pay-per-view star? How many times has Loma fought on pay-per-view? I'm guessing.
Right, but what does having to do with the pay-per-view star overall really have to do with the point? This is why I don't review a lot of this idiot's videos. He's even worse. He's the worst overall analyst that I've seen, quote-unquote analyst, because he's really not even an analyst. He's just a mentally deranged person that goes on these emotional rants. It makes no damn sense whatsoever. What does being or not being a pay-per-view star have to deal with overall with the type of opponents overall and clearly not facing the elite of competition? What the hell does that have to do overall with being a pay-per-view star? So that's your argument overall about, apparently Lomachenko's jealous and all that sort of shit. No, what Lomachenko told about Gervonta Tank Davis was mainly the truth.
0, because the answer is 0. Could Lomachenko possibly be jealous of Gervonta Tank Davis? Let me explain some. Gervonta Tank Davis is the face of boxing. And I know y'all Canelo Alvarez fans just started to cry.
No, Gervonta Tank Davis is not the face of boxing. But you're gonna hear Southpaw's argument to why Gervonta Tank Davis is the face of boxing. Just take a look at his argument.
Gervonta Tank Davis.
And keep in mind when I say that he's not the face of boxing, he is a star. That does not mean trying to degrade his star power. He is an A-grade level star. He gets pay-per-view sales. He gets a great amount of attraction. But no, he's not the face of boxing. The face of boxing still very clearly is Canelo. Every time Canelo Alvarez has a fight, whether it's pay-per-view or not, it always gets the most amount of views in boxing. And even the ones that go a little bit lower, there is no fight at Canelo Alvarez that gets less than 300,000 to 500,000 views. Even some of the bigger stars like Errol Spence or Gervonta Tank Davis do not even get that type of viewership.
Has the most exciting fights in boxing. Gervonta Davis and Deontay Wilder, two black American fighters, are the most entertaining fighters in boxing. Not Vasyl Lomachenko or Canelo, the steroid-taking, cheating disgrace Alvarez. People paid to see Tank while Lomachenko fights on free TV. Let me repeat that.
That's great, but once again, what the hell does that have to do with the debate? All you're basically doing is going on your over-emotional ramblings. This has nothing to do with the point. I've heard no debates. I've heard no arguments whatsoever about Gervonta Tank Davis facing legitimate competition.
Gervonta Tank Davis fights on pay-per-view. He's a pay-per-view star. Meanwhile, the great white hype who opened his mouth today fights on free TV. There's a big difference.
Everything that you're saying is reality, and these guys don't want to hear reality.
Tank Davis is a way more exciting fighter than Canelo Alvarez. In Canelo's last fight, he struggled with the 40-year-old man due to his alcohol use.
Oh, please. People try to act like Canelo Alvarez, that he had like a split decision or something with this dude. Canelo Alvarez completely dominated Gennady Golovkin from bottom to top, or top to bottom, and it was very clear, in my opinion, that Canelo Alvarez also carried Gennady Golovkin a little bit, that he was not going at full capacity. Because as soon as Gennady Golovkin really was coming at him with that work in the final rounds, Canelo said, oh, okay, I'm going to start going to your body. And then all of a sudden, Gennady Golovkin was a little bit stopped in his tracks. It was very clear, in my opinion, just because of the way they wanted that trilogy to end out, that Canelo was carrying Gennady Golovkin and that he was not going full capacity. It doesn't mean that he wasn't trying. But just like overall, a lot of people believe in the Errol Spence and Mikey Garcia fight, or even in the Tyson Fury Deontay Wilder third fight, which I also believe a little bit in those fights as well, that Canelo was carrying Gennady Golovkin.
In Gervonta Tank Davis' last fight, he scored a beautiful knockout. Tank is the face.
Yes, he scored a beautiful knockout over a guy who couldn't box. Certain guys that are watching this video or within my comment section could probably box better than what Rolando Romero ever could dream of. Now, of course, that's a little bit hyperbolic, but listen, at the end of the day, Rolando Romero had no boxing skill whatsoever. This dude had no boxing skill whatsoever. He had no defense. He had very poor head movement when it came down to it. His punches were very wild and very sloppy. The only thing that he really had was punching power. And Gervonta actually was losing the fight before he ended up beating Rolando Romero. Now, in my opinion, it's very possible that Gervonta could have been carrying Rolando Romero. But Gervonta Tank Davis, he is going to have to start getting in the ring with elite fighters.
Of boxing.
And even if he beats Ryan Garcia, I'm not 100% if that would be an A-grade win either. Because Ryan Garcia, even though he does seem very talented, I'm not really sure how much of a finished product he actually is.
Leaders gotta accept these things, and I really don't care if you don't agree with me. This is my opinion. Welcome to the United States of America, where I have the freedom of speech. Tank is the...
So that's basically Southpaw TV's argument. This is my opinion. This is America. I don't care if you don't agree with me. This is my opinion. Whenever someone says that, whenever you hear overall somebody say that I don't care if you don't agree with me, this is my opinion, they know overall that it's some bullshit. Because I hear it overall from ESPN all the time, or a certain amount of other people. It's usually with NBA all top 10 lists where they try to put LeBron James the greatest of all time or some bullshit, or Kendrick Perkins overall tries to say some stupid shit and put Steph Curry in the top 4 of all time and says, I don't care if you don't agree with me. This is my top 10 list. And if you don't like it, you can go on. It's just some stupid shit. Like, come on, man. Whenever you hear someone say that, they know they're full of shit.
Piece of boxing.
It is what it is.
I knew once Vasyl Lomachenko...
Gervonta Tank Davis is one of the biggest stars in boxing. He is one of the faces of boxing. Is he the face of boxing? Absolutely not. No. Because when you actually compare, things factually, and that's how you also know when someone is a true hater of someone, because these guys like Dante and Southpaw and a certain amount of these other channels, especially when it comes to Canelo Alvarez, they don't overall just You know, they don't overall just try to tear him down as a fighter and, oh, allegedly he's ducking this guy. They'll tear down his numbers. You know, when they believe that it's not up to par, they will tear down his numbers, which is very apparent, and it's very clear and concise how many numbers Canelo gets compared to everybody else. There's no bigger star in boxing right now. It's not that close, and there's no problem with that. There's no reason to get up in arms.
Chicken came back from the war top rank, was gonna try to portray him as some type of war hero. And if y'all go on Top Rank's YouTube channel, they're doing just that. Meanwhile, Gervonta Tank Davis is too busy being the face of boxing, fighting on pay-per-view, while Lomachenko fights on free TV. Haters gotta deal with it. Speaking of racist haters, the quote.
But anyways, that's really about it for today. I just thought that I would review that. I thought that that'd be particularly interesting. But anyway, that's probably going to be the last video that I review Mr. Southpaw. I think I maybe reviewed one other video of him a very, very long time ago. But he's not a guy that I like to review a whole lot because he really presents no logical or no possible arguments whatsoever. All he does is put over a bunch of unstable, over-emotional, pro-racial bullshit. I mean, this dude, once again, is emotional to the point to where it's almost it's almost dangerous. But anyway, that's really about it. Thank you all so much for watching, and we will see what happens with Mr. Vasyl Lomachenko and Gervonta Tank Davis next. Of course, Lomachenko has that fight against Jermaine Ortiz, and at least from what I'm hearing, that's not going to be an easy fight. As for Gervonta Tank Davis, it appears that he's going to try to get Ryan Garcia, which is a very big pay-per-view fight, but I don't think that Ryan Garcia is really ready for Gervonta Tank Davis at the moment. I thought that maybe he should have fought someone like Teofimo Lopez next, and then I think that would have been a perfect fight to make, but we'll see what happens. We'll see. Anyways, that's really about it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you all later.